This is a podcast produced by Ashridge Business School. The challenge of local leadership. Leadership within organisations, especially those delivering key public services at the local level, has never been more important. But growing demands are leading to even greater challenges. Ashridge Business School is supporting organisations and leaders across the local public sector. Here, one local leader discusses what they have learned about leadership, the challenges of change, and prospects for the future.
My name's Paul Head. I'm principal of the College of North East London, which is in Tottenham, in the northeast bit of the city. I'm in my 7th year as principal, and I've been with the college since July 2001. Yeah, I think the last part of the question there about how the leadership roles changed, I think is the most important, because I think the thing I've learned in the 7 years I've been doing this is that leadership changes certainly between every year and certainly between every month, and sometimes feels that every day something new you have to adapt to. I think the key things for me has been the college has been on a journey since 2001, when we had a very poor Ofsted inspection, on a kind of quality improvement journey, and what you need to do to get from being branded unsatisfactory to becoming satisfactory is one set of tasks that you need to do. Then from getting satisfactory to good to outstanding requires a different set of tasks. And I think the thing that's really struck me is what you need to do to maintain outstanding and to improve further on that requires a different set of things, and that's my current kind of leadership preoccupation, which is how do you stop yourself coasting. I think the biggest challenges internally inside the institution at the moment is tackling complacency, I think would be the way I put it. Is that we had a really good Ofsted inspection as a college, so Glad came along and said, you know, you're kind of good with many outstanding features, and leadership and management got outstanding, and achievement and standards got good, and all these kind of things. And I think the real challenge is to say to people, well, that's okay, but that was then. We need to continue that improvement drive, and trying to make sure that we're clear about what excellence looks like now, as opposed to what maybe excellence looked like when we started out on the journey as an institution. So I think that's quite a challenge to articulate, and I think that translates into a leadership and management challenge of, as I was saying earlier, that when you're addressing a set of problems in an organisation, you know, tackling burning bushes and all these things around the landscape, it requires a certain kind of thing. You need a kind of more directive leadership style for some issues. Some issues require more of a collective team building kind of response. And so we did a lot of time and effort into solutions orientated management through the use of coaching for solutions, to get people to focus on what's good and how that can be improved, how people are performing and improving performance. And the real challenge at the moment is how do you take that collegiate team building, team working kind of approach, which has been successful for us, but give it a harder, more performance management edge. And I think trying to blend that's my current preoccupation, trying to blend those two things internally. Of we want to keep that positives of a coaching orientated approach, but recognising that to get to excellence, we're probably going to have to be a bit sharper edged in some aspects of performance management. Externally, I think the biggest challenge in leadership terms is the focus on leadership and management, diversity, all those kind of people issues has kind of slipped a bit in the current environment. And my worry is that people will take their eye off the people development aspect from senior leadership down and from junior people leadership up. To take their eye off that ball in order to address, you know, the current constraints of the economic consequences, all these kind of things. And before we know it, we'll be back into task rather than purpose. If you're in your 30s or 40s in a reasonable level of a leadership position in an organisation, you probably haven't had to manage in a recession context. So I think the real challenge at the moment is knowing how to respond, because you haven't got the reserves of knowledge and experience that have been in a leadership position before to apply to the current set of circumstances, even though they're very different from the the recession in the early 90s, and certainly very different from the recession in the 1980s. So therefore you've got people learning on the job, and I think that's a real challenge for us, that how do we learn from the past, what happened, what worked, what didn't work in the past, and how do we apply that to a slightly different set of circumstances we're in at the moment. Having a plan and knowing what you're trying to achieve at the end of that plan, and you will have to change things as you go along, I think is really, really important. So I think we need to take all the initiatives we've got at the moment, and do they add up to an overall strategy for continuing to upskill the UK population in a time of economic straightening. And that's quite a challenge, I think, for our sector. Virtually everybody you speak to at work and outside of work knows somebody who's been impacted on by the current economic circumstances. So I think it's created a kind of mood of fear's too strong a word, I think, of apprehension, I think, about what their own position is, what their family's position is. And that affects people's confidence. And I think it's really quite interesting. We talk a lot about confidence in the market and financial confidence, all those kind of things, but there's really quite a kind of, I sense a feeling of kind of dampened expectations. And I think that's really dangerous for an educational institution, because what that does is dampen your expectations for the people we serve. So it's that kind of trying to make sure that people have high aspirations, because lots of the people we'll be training, whether young people or adults, we're training them for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years time, and trying to keep that focus on we will get through this, and when we get through it, we've got to put people we're responsible for providing education and training for in the best possible position to take advantage of the economic upturn. So there are some very immediate pressures to do those changes quicker than we did them before, and it's not about doing more, as I say, it's about doing different. I think probably what gets me keep going in the morning is that I know we're crucial to helping loads of people in our community deal with the consequences of the economic downturn. And what gives me hope is we can continue to do a great job in that kind of context. And it's for me, it's about doing a great job in that context, not just about doing a whole load of tasks that makes me feel better about trying to help people who are unemployed, but doing a great job with them in terms of actually preparing them for the future. So, and I think in groups of staff, I think they can see that there's a real kind of sense of we can do something to help, and I think that does give people a sense of hope. But it is nonetheless edged off with that fear of apprehension, of a personal fear of apprehension. I think the bit that I think people hope in the public sector that all this money flowing in will result in more jobs in the public sector, or guarantees jobs in the public sector in a way that perhaps in other economic downtimes we haven't seen. I think it's a real danger of the public sector expanding to cope with recession, and then in 18 months, 2 years, us having to then reduce it quite radically. And so one of the balancing acts, I think, for leadership and management at the moment is back to our do more or do different, is to not take on more people that you're only going to have to let go when the next spending round starts. So I think it's a complex picture on hope. I think you've got to manage expectations of staff to ensure that they don't get complacent by thinking being in the public sector is a comfortable place at the moment, because it's might be slightly more secure than other places, but certainly longer term I think we're going to face some real challenges.
For more information, please visit www.ashridge.org.uk/local.